4587. That's 800-240-4587.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that is in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest enough, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish and market and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Offer your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you've lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost. Regardless of your age, all you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Hello. Well, we switched seats this week. Tricking you this week.
You're in the hot seat.
I'm in the hot seat. Yeah, it means I'm in charge of all this here.
All the buttons.
It's all good. Well, welcome. I'm Sonia V.
And I'm Eva Iguaran.
Welcome to A Common Thread.
The wins, the losses, and the curveballs of life.
Yes. Well, we are back. It's Wednesday, 6 p.m. And we're just so happy that you're here joining us. And, well, you know, like we always do, we like to check in. I'm not used to sitting over here, so I got to turn this way. So, Eva, I know this is a load. This is what I always say to my patients. I'm going to ask a loaded question. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Okay.
Just okay. I'm here and well.
Okay.
I got to ride my bike this morning.
Oh, okay.
So, and then do a short run after that. So I'm limping a little bit.
How early did you go out?
We started at 6.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
So I was up at 4:45.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What time did you go to bed?
Probably 11.
Ooh.
I definitely didn't get enough sleep.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, one day I want to be just like you when I grow up. Anyway, well, every week we decide what we're going to talk about, and we thought, well, maybe let's do a series instead of jumping from topic to topic, which is okay. So we decided we're going to start doing one on grief, and this is part one. We don't know how many, probably about 4, I guess we're going to be doing maybe for the month of August. And normally, it's like grief. We kind of talk about, what grief looks like and um, the process of it. We're going to do a little bit different because when people think of grief, Eva, they think more of like someone dying, losing someone to death, which is part of that. But there's also a lot of parts of grief. There's a lot of different types of grief. And again, the show is called The Common Thread. And the common thread is that we all go through these griefs.
Mm-hmm.
And, what we'll do is take some time, the beginning, the first half of the show, kind of talk about all of these, and then kind of at the second half, talk about the biblical aspects of grief, what the Bible says about grief, and how to kind of intermingle the two. So I know we've gone through lots of grief, right, in our own personal lives, and not to get into too much of that part necessarily today, although we can talk about it here and there as well. But, as a chaplain, we deal with a lot of grief situations. The one thing when you walk into a room or in someone's house or in a facility, and either someone's on hospice or in the hospital for whatever reason, they're not only dealing with their sickness at that point, although that's a big part of it. They're also, because can you imagine, like, when you're in a hospital bed or if you're on hospice and now you have a lot of time because you're laying in a bed and you have a lot of time to think and reminiscing of things that happened, things you could have done differently, regrets. And so
Hopes, fears.
hopes, fears, the unknown, what happens when I die, and where am I going to go, and all these things that people think of, during that time. And so, hey, so let's talk about it. And when I was doing my chaplaincy, clinical pastoral education, they call it, and it's called CPE for short. But I like to say the whole name if you're not familiar with the term CPE. So when going through that is an internship, residency kind of thing. And you also have academic work when you're doing it, but then you have to do clinical hours. And each semester you have to do 300 clinical hours plus 100 hours of like classroom hours. So 400 hours in total, roughly. You might do a little bit more. But in one of those semesters, we read a book, and the book is called All Our Losses, All Our Griefs. Last name of the authors are Mitchell and Anderson. And they talk about a bunch of griefs in there. And we'll briefly go over them, but then we may not be able to touch all of them today because I don't like rushing through stuff, especially with a topic like this. But we'll talk about them as much as we can. And one of the ones from their book, again, this is from their book, so this is what we learned in class, was material loss. So basically, what it says here is, this refers to the loss of physical objects or tangible things that hold meaning. It might be as concrete as losing a home in a fire, having your car stolen, or losing savings through financial hardship. These losses can shake a person's sense of stability and security. Sometimes even their identity of those possessions were deeply tied to self-worth or memory. So imagine, like, if you have a home and the home goes up in flames and you have a lot of sentimental things in your home, or you've lived there for 50 years, all the memories that come with living in a home that you've been there for a long time. Now that home is gone. And so how does someone deal with something like that? I don't know of anyone personally that particular thing has happened to, like, house went on fire.
Our house, my home, my mom's actual home.
Right. Well, I do know somebody actually.
Now, you do know somebody. her house burned down.
Right.
Yeah. And then a few months later, she lost her barn. So that's a big material loss. I also know someone who their dad had passed away, and then the truck that he had left to his son got stolen.
Mm. So in those two instances, how was the grieving process?
I think for my mom, it's been pretty rough
Okay.
because she did have, or as a whole family, we had a lot of memories
Mm.
in that home.
Right. Right.
So it wasn't our childhood home, but it was a home here in Texas that we visited frequently.
Mm.
So, and there wasn't much, I would say, that you could save,
Wow.
even though she tried, because she that's in her personality.
Well, of course.
It's
Yeah.
anything that has a function, she thinks somebody should use it,
Mm.
whether it's a plastic container or. But yeah, she was pretty. She still is very sentimental over the property.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Well, I can only imagine what that feels like. I mean, for me, like I think I'm always like worried about that kind of thing. Like the house. I don't know why I worry about stuff like that, but I just do over something that I can't really control. But
I
I
mean,
could.
I material loss is serious. Like I remember as a kid losing a small little photo album, and it bothered me forever.
Mm.
I mean, I just now thought about it now after I don't know how many years. But it's like memories. You have pictures that you like to thumb through.
Well, that would be like equal to a kid losing a stuffed animal.
Yeah, that they've held on to for many years.
Yeah, that happened to my sister. She had like a little stuffed animal she lost as a little kid, and it was very traumatic for her. And so, but I've heard of stories. There was this one story of, I don't know where I heard it. I think it was like in a sermon or something years ago, that this child lost their stuffed animal, and the parents even tried to replace it, and then they couldn't. And then somehow, I don't know if there was like an address or something on the stuffed animal. I don't know what happened, but they ended up either finding it, or the person sent it to them. But this was like months later, and then the little girl was like so happy, but for like she couldn't sleep. So I mean, we think, oh, that's so minor, but for a little kid, that's their greatest loss, right? Number 2 from their book, All Our Losses, All Our Griefs, is relationship loss. This is the most recognized form of loss, losing people we care about. It covers not just death, but also estrangement, divorce, or even a close friend moving away. The pain here isn't just about the person's absence, it's about losing the connection, support, and shared history that came with them. This is a huge one.
It's a big area
Yeah,
to
this
cover
is a
because it can, like it described, it could be divorce. It could be a breakup.
mhm.
Maybe you're dating somebody.
A breakup, yeah. I mean, that's a big deal.
And just from experience from years ago, I remember feeling like a part of me was lost in that relationship
Mm.
and didn't have closure or answers. So it can be pretty traumatic.
Well, yeah, if you don't have closure
So
or
even
answers, yeah.
if we say, okay, well, they broke up, but it can be pretty traumatic for people. Even a breakup, even if it's not like they were married and then there's a divorce, just a breakup can be grieved over the relationship lost.
Yeah. Friendships too. I've had friends move away, and that was always hard for me. I remember like when I was like 13, we moved from New York. Ooh, I'm from New York originally, and we lived in Queens. And in the middle of the school year, it was like November, and we moved maybe 30, 40 minutes away. It wasn't a huge move, but I didn't drive. And know what happens when you move. Sometimes you say you're going to keep in touch. I mean, there were a couple of friends, and one friend actually to this day we're still friends. She still lives in New York, but we keep in touch from time to time. But I remember it being really hard for me, and I remember even she moved prior to that. She moved to like upstate New York, and then I was still in Queens, so that was traumatic when she moved, and then I moved in like I think in the middle of 8th grade, and then having to go to this new school and having to make new friends. And, you know, as people know, junior high kids are not like the nicest people.
Right.
And so it wasn't really an easy transition. So that was hard. Uh,
I think I had a similar experience of friends like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, really tight friendship. And then I moved back to Alabama.
oh wow, yeah, that's hard.
And we were all crying. We even saved the toilet paper that we cried on.
Oh wow.
I mean, it was
Well, that's
oh
really
yeah.
hard. Yeah. Yeah. Even when we moved here to Texas, so my oldest was 3, my youngest was a baby. So I think I was going through postpartum depression to begin with. And then we moved across the country to Texas, and that was so hard. And I didn't feel like myself at that time, and I didn't know what was going on, but that was a big grief for me. And now being away from everything and everybody I know. So yeah, relationship loss, that's huge.
And I have a book here on because that talked about estrangement. This book says, "Done with the crying.
Mm,
Help and healing for mothers of estranged adult children."
mm,
So I guess it's the first time for me to talk about it in such a big way. And I'm not going to go into details, but I haven't wanted to read the book because I haven't wanted to identify as a mother of a estranged adult child.
mm,
So I've kind of just um, like leafed through it a little bit.
mm,
So I don't know that I'm ready for it. But as I was looking through it on my way over, I was like, wait a second, I might be ready. It might be time.
mm,
So it's been 2 years. And as the collection of people that I share briefly with, I have learned that I'm not alone. And there's a
mm,
lot of families, mothers, fathers who are going through this kind of grief.
mm. That's a big deal. Done with the crying. I like the title of that book. I'm sure it's a heavy read, but I'm sure it's a good one. The next type of loss they speak about in their book is intrapsychic loss. This type of loss is more internal and less visible. It's about losing dreams, hopes, or parts of yourself. Maybe you realize you'll never have that career you wanted or lose your sense of innocence after a betrayal. These losses can be hard for others to see, but they can cut deeply and lead to a profound sense of grief. You know, in loss of a person to death or even like a divorce, let's say, or even a relationship loss, period, there's other secondary losses as we talk about, and one of them is like dreams, right? So let's say you like for instance, I lost my son. So those are grandchildren that I'll never have, right? And or somebody with that divorced, they had all these hopes and dreams for that marriage, and now after 20 years it's over. And now what? Now they're like, maybe in their 50s, and they're like, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know who I am anymore. And I thought we were going to grow old together kind of deal. And so that's a really hard one, losing hopes and dreams that you don't know. When you go to the supermarket and the person, checking you out, you don't know that part of them because that's something you could see until you start actually talking to somebody. And then you're like, oh, you know, I've had all these losses and these dreams and hopes of whatever that was. Maybe I, never got to like go to college, and I ended up, for whatever reason, now I feel like I'm too old, and what do I do? Um, but that's a interesting loss. I mean, you don't really think about that as a loss. A lot of times we tell people to get over it. oh, get over it, suck it up, buttercup kind of
Mhm.
deal, you know? And I'm not saying that we need to wallow in it, but these are real losses. So the thing is, what happens is we're told so much to suck it up, buttercup, that we push these griefs aside, but they always somehow come back to the forefront of our mind to they're there because we don't deal with them. So they just constantly are a reminder to us.
Well, hopes and dreams, like it's talking about some kind of betrayal
Or
or
even, yeah, betrayal from I don't know, someone
so a
you would
significant other, and maybe you had hopes and dreams of marrying them and then having children with them.
maybe they cheated on you, or it could be a friend that betrayed you. You confided in them about a bunch of stuff, and then they went out and just told a bunch of rumors about, or told that stuff to people. And now, you're who you are, your character's on the line now because of it, and because you entrusted them with that kind of information. So that's tough. Functional grief is the next one functional loss, I'm sorry, is what they talk about in the next one. And that's when illness, injury, or age takes away physical or mental ability. This lose like losing the ability to walk, see, or even remember. It's a functional loss. This grief is about losing independence or the sense of being able bodied and capable, and it can change how someone interacts with the world. Okay, so I'm going to be vulnerable for a minute. Again, when it talks about here, interestingly enough, it talks about mental ability, like losing the ability to walk, see, or even remember. So, I'm menopausal. And one of the things with that, or symptoms, if you want to call it, or signs, or whatever, is losing your memory or being forgetful. And I've had a lot of that happen lately. And like I had an episode the other day and I started crying because I was like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? Why am I being forgetful about stuff? And a lot of it is home stuff. Because at home, I'm like, if I don't write it down, it's not getting done. At work, I write everything down. And so it gets done. But at home, I have a tendency not to write everything down thinking I'm going to remember. And it doesn't always happen. So I had an episode last week that I just burst into tears in the car. That's what usually happens. But for me, that's a loss because I wasn't like that before. So now I have to go to doctors to figure out what's going on. And so take medications, maybe, I don't know.
No, I was teasing Enrique, and I'm like, one day you're gonna have a conversation with God, and He's gonna be like, Eva was having this memory lapse and stuff, and it was all part of this menopause, premenopause, whatever. Because even before I even knew that there was any kind of connection with the memory loss and premenopausal stuff, I was just thinking, what's going on? I can't remember this or I can't remember that. But I'll tell Enrique, hey, like this is me. I don't know what's going on. This is my mind right now.
Right.
I am forgetful.
Yeah. It's a real thing, people.
It's a real thing.
Women are not making it up. It's real.
So after we do the series on grief, we may have to do one on premenopausal.
I was thinking about, actually, today I was thinking about that. We should do one
Stay
on
tuned.
premenopause and menopause.
Mhm.
Stay tuned. At a theater near you. Anyway,
so yeah, it could be our elderly parents. I know my dad went through the dementia. My mom is, I don't know what stage, but she's coming along the same way. With forgetfulness, it's more. So yeah, what are they thinking inside? But they're grieving, I'm sure, not being able to remember like they used to.
well, yeah, and that the functional loss is also like, when you get older, there's a lot of things you can't do anymore that you used to do. And now
You have to rely on someone to
so
drive you everywhere.
the loss of
independence.
the loss of independence.
Right.
That's a huge thing with the elderly. Huge.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad moved here from New York, and being somewhat independent there, walking around, be able to go to the store. Because there, he lives in New York City, so your stores are close by. But here, you need a car. And anyway, so he came here and it was a big change for him. So that was a big loss for him. But also, coming to the realization of that, that I can't do the same things like I used to do. That's a hard thing. And, I have a soft spot in my heart for the elderly now because I'm going through, having, my parents are older now. So you start to think about those things more. So when I go into, I'm around a patient that's older and they're going through that, that's always something I try to validate in with them, hey, I can only imagine or can't imagine what you're feeling right now. So, and then other injuries and, like losing a limb. I've had a few patients that was, I walked into the room and they were now having to think about either losing their life or losing a limb. And they had to choose losing the limb. And that's a big change for somebody, now you have to rely on other people to help you, or now you have to learn how to do things differently. The next one is role loss. We all play different roles in life: parent, spouse, employee, community leader. When we lose a role through retirement, children leaving home, divorce, or redundancy can leave us feeling adrift, questioning our value or purpose without that identity. So that's a hard one too. I think when I lost my husband, more so than when I lost my son, because you're always a parent. But when I lost my husband, technically not married anymore. And so, I mean, the state doesn't recognize me as married. I'm widowed, right? So now I had to think of that was my role was wife. Now I'm not. And how does the state see me? How do people see me? Because they still see me. They don't see me that as that anymore. So now, your life changes based on that. So, or when you lose a job, I mean, that's a big deal. Sometimes people lose a career and they've been doing that career for years and now they get fired, or something happens that they downsize and they get laid off and now they don't know what to do with their lives. And their identity is surrounded by their role. And the last one before we go to break is systematic loss. This involves changes in the larger system we belong to: family, community, culture, or even environment. Think of moving to a new country, a family dynamic shifting after divorce, or a community being uprooted by disaster, which just happened a few weeks ago, right? Back in with the river overflowing and hundreds of people passing away, and now hundreds and hundreds of families being affected by that. The loss isn't just personal, but collective, and can bring feelings of alienation or displacement. So we saw that with, when there's a hurricane, people having to leave.
Kerrville.
Yeah. So that's a big deal too. Systematic loss. So, we'll try to, as the second half comes, we're going to bring the Bible into this as well, but we're going to maybe dive a little deeper into certain ones. And if we have to do a part 2 for this next week, we will. But we're glad that we still have about a minute. I'm jumping the gun. I always do that.
Well, we are glad that they will join us for the second half, and we do want them to join us and think of others and what others have possibly gone through, the people closest to us in our life, maybe experiencing some type of grief, and our listeners can relate to one of these 6 that you read. Please share the name of the book before we go to break. So
it's called All Our Losses, All Our Griefs, and the authors are Mitchell and Anderson. And it's an excellent, excellent book. It's not a very long book, but a really good book. And I would recommend reading it, even if you're not going to school for anything. It's just good to understand people's losses. And, even for yourself, I think it's a good read. So,
yeah, you mentioned Suck It Up, Buttercup. And I always think of it as a kind of a funny thing, but just for us to be more aware of who we're sitting next to.
Yeah. We'll see you back in a couple of minutes. Thanks for joining us. See you in the second half.
If you are trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Attention all business owners and creative minds. Do you need a unique and personalized touch for your products? Look no further than Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs. We offer custom laser engraving services for a variety of products, including promotional items and corporate or personal gifts. With state-of-the-art equipment and a team of skilled designers, we can engrave intricate designs on virtually any material. Whether it's a special message, a company logo, or a custom design, Romika Laser Engraving will help you make your mark. And the best part, our prices are affordable and our turnaround time is quick.
I couldn't be happier with the work Romika Laser Engraving did for me. The engraving on my product was precise and exactly what I wanted.
So don't wait any longer to add a personal touch to your products. Call Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs today at 817-400-4040 or visit our website at romikadesigns.com. We look forward to helping you make your mark.
Well, welcome back to A Common Thread. I'm Sonia V.
I'm Eva Iguaran.
And so welcome back to our second half. And we're going to read some commercials before we continue.
North Texas proudly serves all of North Texas and can be heard all over the world on TuneIn Radio Network and on the North Texas Radio app, available on Android and Apple CarPlay, or just ask Alexa to play North Texas Radio. Check out our lineup and more, northtexasradio.com, ntxradio.com. We thank our valued sponsors in helping us amplify the voices of North Texas communities and businesses. So protect your family with a will or trust. Connect with Todd Hurd and Associates Attorney at Law for all your civil law needs, texasattorneylaw.com. Processing credit cards, join the Swipe Nation today and save on processing fees at swipenationusa.com. Locally owned and operated and will beat any rates. Got sleeves, dress your arms, and more. tiffysleeve.com for women's accessories and more, made in the USA. It's time to take your business to the next level. Hosting a radio show and podcast is a powerful way to connect with a wider audience, build brand awareness, and drive sales. Let's discuss your business goals and how a custom show can help you achieve them. Email Tiffany at t.hurd@ntxradio.com to help to get amplified.
Wow. Good. All right. Well, welcome back to our second half. So we were talking about, we're particularly focusing on this book that I mentioned, All Our Losses, All Our Griefs. And we want to touch a little bit about what the Bible says. But, I wanted to touch briefly on the 5 stages of grief. And everybody, when I talk to people, and I used to be this way too, because I didn't know, but, you think that grief stages are linear, like they go in order, right? Like, denial and then anger and so on and so forth. And grief doesn't work that way. Grief is actually more like you've seen a ball of yarn enmeshed together. That's what grief looks like. And under the primary feelings, there's secondary and third feelings that are under those, right?
And you might go back to them several times. Like you might go back to denial or you might go back to anger.
Oh yeah, and they could be, and you can have them all at the same time. So sometimes for like, for instance, now this is of course, generally speaking, of course, there's exceptions to the rule, but a more acceptable emotion for women is sadness than anger, right? And for men, a more acceptable emotion is anger opposed to sadness. So if you
So
see
interesting.
So if you see a man, not always, again, there's exceptions, right? And we're not saying in all cases this is the case, but if you see a man that's angry, there's normally a lot of sadness behind that anger. But of course, you're not going to see a man cry because what are boys told?
To just
You know,
suck it up, buttercup.
little boys don't cry. Boys don't cry.
Boys don't cry. Keep it
Right.
to yourself.
Yeah. And so what do boys think? They grow up thinking that, well, I shouldn't cry. So instead of crying, they get angry. And so little girls, well, for a woman, anger is not an acceptable emotion. No, she's such an angry woman. There's like that, that. And I'm thinking like, is she angry or is it because she just speaks her mind? There's a difference, right? And so now I'm not saying that that's the case in all cases, but for a woman, many times you'll see sadness as the more acceptable emotion, and every so often the anger will come out. But all those tears that you saw, a lot of that was, released. A lot of it is sadness, but there's a lot of anger behind that. It's just not an acceptable emotion for a woman to display that. And so the my phone, I mean, not my phone, my mic is far, you can hear me. So the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. So denial is, for me, I think, although these were not the original, God did not, when he created the earth, we weren't supposed to deal with death and pain and all these things. But when sin came into the world and we had to deal with these things, at this point, then all these other emotions that were not there, now they're there. But I feel like denial for me, so the night that my son died, I remember us coming home, and thankfully we had some relatives that actually had a connecting flight and they happened to come by to the hospital, relatives of my husband. And they stayed the night, thankfully, because I don't know what we would have done if it was just the 2 of us. Because our son, our youngest, stayed with some friends because it was just the house is very heavy. And we thought it would be better if he stayed with someone else at least for a couple of days. Anyway, I remember like us laying in the bed and the entire night just stared at the wall, the ceiling. I could not feel anything. Like I've never felt like that in my entire life, and nor do I ever want to feel like that ever again. That was the worst feeling, and I felt like that. I mean, I felt it a lot that night, and probably for a good couple of weeks I felt it, and then after that it was like on and off. But the first night it was just like if you touched me, I wouldn't have been able to feel, and that's a scary place to be. And I think that's God's way of protecting us, not to feel, because boy, when it comes, it comes. When the anger and the denial, I mean, not the denial, the frustration, the sadness, when those tears and that anger comes, it comes. So I think it gives us some time to kind of deal with it. I noticed that when I talk to people after they lose someone, especially when I was doing bereavement, and I would call them, the first week we do like a condolence call, and I mean, most people seemed quote unquote okay. They really weren't okay. And then when I called them like in 6 weeks, because there's a follow-up phone call, that's when it's like when the funeral happened and when everybody else went home and when the meals stopped coming, now you find yourself with your feelings. And that's heavy. And at that moment, when I call that same person initially, and then I called them 6 weeks later, now they're like, I spent an hour on the phone with them because now they weren't as busy because, in the beginning you have to deal with a lot of stuff. So, you're planning the funeral and dealing with a lot of administrative things. And now you don't have to. You have to deal with your feelings. So denial anger, bargaining. The bargaining, have you ever dealt with that? With the bargaining is like, like pleading with God, and because it doesn't feel real. Like whatever the loss is, it does not feel
Or
real.
maybe when you go to sleep and you are in between that state of kind of like not completely asleep, kind of waking up, and you're just crying out to God, can this just all be a dream? Can I wake up to a house where my husband's alive and my kids are well?
Right.
Can we go back to that?
Right. Yeah. So, or thinking that like your kid is at summer camp and imagining that they're going to walk through the door at any moment, because that's what it feels like. And it felt like that for like 2 years for me, thinking, oh, he's just going to come home. And so that's the bargaining part. And then, of course, depression is a normal response. And just because someone, there's different types of depression. We're not going to get into that part today. Maybe we'll have a podcast on that one day. But the depression part, they call it like circumstantial depression. So it's like, when you're going through something hard, you're in a valley. And, the one thing, and I'm going to call myself out on this because I'm a Christian, but Christians were really bad at times at when someone's depressed. The one thing I heard a lot, the term was, where is your faith? It's like, how can you, say that you have faith, but be so depressed? And that made me angry. And I thought, but I still love God. I just miss my son. I miss my husband. Like I miss them. So like,
well, you hear people, I guess, uplifting someone who went through a situation and they seem, oh, look how they mourned this loss, and they're so strong, and so you hear that, right? And so when you're in the middle of your own grief, you want to, I guess, explain to people, wait a second, because I had a well-meaning Christian tell me, basically, where's your faith? I don't see you walking out faith. And I'm like, can you see the mustard seed that I'm holding on to?
oh, I love that response.
I was a little angry.
Right.
I was a little frustrated, a little angry, and I was thrown off by the response.
Right.
Like, can you see all the ins and outs? Can you see the beginning of the end? Are you God to point out, I don't see your faith in this?
I love that response, the mustard seed of faith.
It's very small. Like when you're in a situation, in a scenario of loss, and, maybe you're fighting with God. Maybe you don't really, maybe you are questioning your faith.
And that's okay. I think that God is okay with us doing that because that's what kids do with their parents, right?
Exactly.
We go to, little kids are always asking questions and sometimes challenging us. And at some point they realize that we're the ones in charge.
And maybe stomping their feet at their parents and saying, this is not what I want. I do not want this path. I do not want this story. I do not want to read this book.
Right.
Can you turn it around right now? Can you change the story? And so you're maybe pounding on the chest of Jesus, saying, no, this is not what I signed up for.
No.
But God's big, and there are stories in the Bible and examples in the Bible of people who wrestled with God, with people who questioned, who asked hard, difficult questions.
Well, yeah, like an example of that is Job. I feel like next to Jesus, Job is probably the one in the Bible that lost the most. And, he lost all of his 10 kids in one, well, they say it was like a tornado, whirlwind, right? And then not only that, he lost all of he was a wealthy man, and he lost all of his livestock. And on top of that, then loses his health. And the 2 things for me that stood out in that particular story was He said two things. One was, I wish I had never been born. And the other thing was, I know my Redeemer lives. So, see, friends, faith and pain can live in the same person. So, you can still have both. And even Job questioned God. Now, God told him after he said, are you done now? He said, well, were you there when I created XYZ, when I created the sea and the sand and the earth and all of these things? Were you there? Now, but God allowed him to. God can handle it. And he knows what we're dealing with. So I don't know why we don't go to him more, like with our real raw feelings, like pretending like we're okay when we're really not. So that's one story in the Bible of great loss and pain. Another one, I mean, there's a ton of them.
And I guess the tiniest verse in the Bible is he wept.
Jesus
or
wept.
Jesus wept.
Yeah.
So we know that he was human like we're human. He had feelings like we have feelings. He had his moment to grieve his hopes and his dreams. Right here, I think it was number 3, talking about hopes and dreams and parts of yourself. He may have not wanted that cup. He didn't want that cup. He said, can this cup pass?
Yes.
So his hopes and dreams on the earth with his family, with his mother, he had siblings. I don't know if the Bible goes into that very deeply, but I believe he had family, right? A mother, a father.
Yes. He had siblings.
And I don't believe he wanted to continue like to the cross. He wanted to, I imagine, keep on going with his hopes and his dreams and being with his family, his friends.
Yeah. Going back to Job quick. Job's wife, there was a part when after he got sick and he had boils on all over his body and he was suffering. And in the beginning, before it all happened and the devil went up to heaven, he was roaming the earth and then he was going back and forth. And God asked Job, have you seen my servant Job? Anyway, to go to the next part, kind of skip a little bit. Then he said, well, Job only serves you because, you give him all this stuff and you protect him. But watch if you start taking things away from him. He will curse you to your face. So saying that, now forward to after now he's getting sick, his wife says, curse God and die. She gets a bad rap for that. Can we cut her some slack, please? She lost 10 of her kids. They lost their livelihood, and now she sees her husband suffering. I'm not saying it was right. I'm just saying, can we extend her some grace?
So allow her to also have her fight with God and be angry.
Yes.
At the situation.
Yes. Absolutely. So there's a lot of stories in the
There's
Bible.
reasons why parts easily God could have said, omit that part.
Yes. And he included it.
And he included that.
Yes.
Because pain looks different for many different people.
Right.
And everybody grieves differently. And she was done with it. She was over the losses.
Yeah. She was. I mean, imagine like on this list, if you had to look at all the loss, they lost material stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They lost relationship. They lost intrapsychic loss because they lost of hopes and dreams because they lost all their 10 kids, right? Functional loss because the son
he was so sick.
He got sick. Let's say the role when children leaving, well, they lost their kids, right? So that was a role loss for them too. They
no
were
longer parents.
Systematic loss. This involves changes in the larger system. We belong to a family. So they experienced every single loss on here. So I would say let's cut her some slack.
I
And
I was gonna say just this verse kind of resonates with all of that about Job. It says, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed; perplexed, but not in despair; persecuted, but not abandoned; struck down, but not destroyed."
I love that verse. One of my favorite.
So
Which verse is that? Where's that coming? What does that
this
come from?
is 2 Corinthians 4, 8, and 9.
That's one of my favorite verses. So yeah. I mean, like I said, Job is a big one, but there's a lot of other losses. I mean, you can go back to the very beginning with Cain and Abel. Can you imagine like Adam and Eve? So for those are not familiar with Adam and Eve or with the story of
Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel, you know, they were brothers and Cain killed his brother.
In a perfect, what seemed like a perfect paradise, and you're raising your children in a perfect garden, a beautiful garden.
Yeah.
Now there already had the sin, right? Because
right.
there had already been a break in relationship
Right.
at that point.
Right, because now, the sin came into the world, so now there was this like, blaming each other for things. Adam and Eve did that. And now they lost one child to death, and the other child was like gonna roam the earth. Banished to roam the earth.
Out of the garden.
Can you imagine the feelings they had?
I lost two sons in one day.
And then can you imagine Adam lived 930 years. He had to hear the story about sin over and over and over again. And Eve too. And they were to blame for it. Can you imagine the sorrow and grief they felt? Let's imagine God himself. He created these beings, his kids, in this perfect environment, before sin. And even then, they still sinned. Is it God's fault? No. But that's what happens when you have free will beings, that they can make their own choice to follow or not follow you. Can you imagine God's heart? And so God pretty much felt these things too, I would say.
I remember the story of who had the coat of many colors? Joseph in the coat of many colors. And the brothers pretending his death, and the father grieving over his favorite son.
Yeah.
Or his beloved son, or one of his younger sons, or his talented son. Whatever. He lost his son that day when they came back and said, "Oh, look, we found his coat. It's got blood all over it."
An animal must have gotten to him.
So all of those years, the dad and the mom were left without answers.
Right.
There were no cell phones to text to figure out from a relative. It was just there's no investigation. I just think about just the stories that even happen in modern time where a kid is abducted, or they're just all those years wondering what happened to their kid.
Right. And left with no answers.
No answers.
No closure.
Now that story does have a much better, brighter ending. But still, all those years not knowing where his son went. And his son went a long ways to Egypt.
Yes. The Bible, now I had verses here. Where'd they go? My verses disappeared. Here we go. The Bible has a lot of verses I'm going to read in regards to grief. I'm going to read some of them. In Psalm 34:18, it says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. So, although this podcast, this part one, is about grief, we want to leave you all with some hope that you are not alone in your grief. And it says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. In 2 Corinthians 1:3-4, it says, God is the God of all comfort who comforts us in our troubles so we can comfort others. That's actually my motto. It's a little bit more, maybe another verse longer, but that's one of the reasons why I got into chaplaincy.
I have one here. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147, verse 3.
I love that. And there's Revelation 21. Oh, I love this. This is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It gives me such goosebumps. It says, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. I'm like, ooh, that seems a little far off. When we look at the world around us, our personal world, and also the world in whole, I'm like, man. But
we have to somehow think, what is God's timing, as far as everything is super fast. Like here on earth, it just seems so slow, but this is just maybe a blink.
Right.
Or a little blip in time.
Right.
But for us, it's just dragging on and on.
Well, it feels like forever. Sometimes it feels like a life sentence when you're going through stuff. But I am glad for hope. I don't know what I would do without it. And I'm glad that we are not alone. I'm glad that even we've been friends for a long time, and we have each other, and we have other family and friends that care and love for us. And we're thankful that we have hope that God is near the brokenhearted. There's actually a verse, I wish I could have found it before, but I know it's in Psalms, and it says that He actually bottles our tears. And when I read that for the first time, it was after my son died, I cried and cried and cried, knowing that God is just like bottling my tears. So, and one of the ones that I really like too, it says in Jeremiah 29:11, it's a popular one. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, but not to harm you, to give you hope and a future. So I hold on to hope because I don't know what else to hold on to, but I hope that you can hold on to hope as well, and in your grief, and know that you are not alone.
Jesus said, I will never leave you, never will I forsake you. Hebrews 13, verse 5. So we have to believe, even when you're feeling depressed or when you're feeling alone, He's always there.
Yes. So we are, excited about this topic. And like I said earlier, we're going to have 4 weeks talking about grief. We'll have a couple of guests throughout the 4 weeks, and then also dive into a little bit more. But there's our music. And we're glad that you joined us today. And like I always say, don't give up. Hold on to Jesus.
Keep looking up.
See you next time.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
Hey, travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them, so you get airline tickets. Prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or